Okay, I'm going to turn off my camera while we're presenting. Good morning, Bobby. Just to make sure that we have a nice bandwidth and that you can see everything clearly. Can you all see my screen? Wonderful. Thanks, James. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I'm really happy to be here with you this year, even if we are only together on Zoom. I hope that you'll enjoy this presentation. We're going to talk about reading and writing strategies that can bridge students from the pre-high school equivalency or 6th to 8th grade reading level up to GED level reading, which would be 9 plus. My name is Rebecca Eller Molitas. I'm your Arkansas New Readers Press representative, and I'm also an adult education teacher myself. I am in the classroom right now, primarily working with English language learners this semester. If you have questions about how some of these techniques might work with language learners in your class, do please feel free to just jump in and ask. Here are the objectives for our session today. We're going to be establishing a shared understanding of how reading and writing strategies impact a learner's progress. We'll be identifying ways to maximize your instructional time and promote learner engagement and interaction through reading and writing. And we'll also look at ways to build these skills with your learners so that they'll be prepared for the GED test. Any discussion about reading instruction, of course, should begin with a shared definition of what we mean by the word reading. Today, I'm going to go with the definition from the Partnership for Reading, which defines reading as a complex system of deriving meaning from print. And that can be print on paper or digitally. No one is born with the ability to read. We all need to be taught how to decode words and their meaning. We're going to look today at 4 hallmarks of reading. First is the foundational phonics, phonemic awareness, and word decoding skills, which you can see here. Sorry about that. The touchscreen computer gets a little excited sometimes. Students need the capacity to associate letters with sounds, and this includes the ability to decode unfamiliar words. Another component we'll be really focusing on today is vocabulary building. Our students need to understand a vocabulary on a deeper level and to also have enough background and vocabulary knowledge to foster comprehension. This includes things like word analysis, along with developing a bank of sight words and building that into tier 2 and tier 3 words. When I say tier 2 and tier 3 words, are people familiar with that terminology? If you could, please tell me in the chat. No, okay. So some no's and some yeses. I'm going to give a brief explanation just for people who may be new to that language. Vocabulary words are divided into 3 tiers. Tier 1 words are your everyday words that are commonly known to readers and speakers. Tier 2 words are academic words that are not specific to one subject. So an example would be the word evaluate. It's an academic word, but it can be used in science, social studies, math, and reading. Tier 3 words are words that are specific to one particular subject typically, and they are academic words. For example, seismology might be a specific word for studying earthquakes. So we're going to talk about ways to build that bank of tier 2 and tier 3 words today. We're also going to talk a bit about developing fluency, which is the ability to read with speed and accuracy. This includes paying attention to tone and punctuation, to being able to recognize the significance of bold print, and to pull information from headings and signal words. And finally, we'll talk about comprehension strategies, which is understanding what they're reading and the ability to pull out main ideas and supporting details from passages. Proficient readers are able to combine and apply 3 key skills when they're reading. These consist of the decoding skills that we just mentioned, also meaning-based reading skills falling into our comprehension, and advanced literacy skills. Decoding skills coupled with meaning-based skills contribute to a student's overall reading development and text comprehension. To develop these skills, we typically need explicit, intensive instruction in order for students to master the symbol and sound relationship. In contrast to that, meaning-based skills tend to require ongoing mastery and practice with content and rich text that grow in complexity. This has been one thing since we got the new GED, right? There's a tremendous focus on being able to pull information from complexity. Good morning, Christina. Reading comprehension can be developed through oral discussion of inferences and applied level questions. These discussions help our students to develop their speaking and listening skills. And finally, our students need to be challenged by being presented with new vocabulary terms, sophisticated sentence structure, and passages that build and expand a student's knowledge and abilities. They also, in this phase, need to build up their writing skills through follow-up activities related to these more complex terms and sentences. As the students discuss text passages, we can include activities that build their critical thinking and reasoning skills, and we can ask them to provide information back to us both orally and in writing. Let's look a little bit at what we mean when we say advanced literacies. Advanced literacies refers to the skills and competencies that promote communication, spoken and written communication in diverse ways with diverse audiences. This is one thing I need to work with my students on a lot, is the difference between what you might say to your professor, what you say to your boss, and what you say to your best friend. When advanced literacies are employed at a universal instructional approach, these 4 instructional guidelines can be implemented in all areas of study: science, math, social studies, and RLA. Students are then able to advance to more complex, deeper texts and to grow their language and literacy skills. Let's take a look at those 4 hallmarks. So hallmark 1, you can see here, is working with and using text with big ideas and rich content. An example of this might be reading a unit on Native American Indians that is directly tied to social studies and that features academic tier 2 and tier 3 vocabulary words. Hallmark 2 here, we can see, is based through discussion. The content can be used to help learners build background knowledge as well as academic language. To do this, we can use pre-reading strategies and during reading strategies to build up reading comprehension. Our third hallmark is to add in writing exercises so that our learners begin to build language and knowledge and to expand their written communication capabilities. And the fourth hallmark here is to have your students using high quality, high utility vocabulary words and language structures to build on strategies and add to the learner's depth of knowledge. For those of you who are using our Journey to Success books, you may be familiar with this format. This format is used to build the student practice sections of that text. So let's take a look at a quick map of how these skills are employed on the GED test. In order to be GED ready, our students need a combination of skills that build on one another. We begin with our basic reading skills that include the foundations of phonemic awareness and fully developed phonics skills. As our students scaffold up, they need to acquire skills that improve their understanding and allow them to analyze and evaluate richer and more complex text. As we talked about, this includes a wide range of vocabulary terms, and they also need their own word building and word recognition skills so that if they encounter unfamiliar words, they have some base of knowledge that they can use to try to figure out what the word might mean. And finally, through practice and assessment, for example, using the GED Ready, we can be able to tell if our students are at the point of taking a section of the GED test or to get a prescriptive plan of what the student needs to review before they can be ready for that test. So let's take a look first at some reading and writing skills and identify ways that you can use these to maximize your instructional time and increase learner engagement. Researcher Johnson O'Connor is known for a study he did related to vocabulary, and he found that a person's vocabulary level is the single best predictor of an individual's occupational success. I thought that this was fascinating. His study does take into account age, gender, academic level, and a lot of other factors. So his findings show that a strong vocabulary came before academic achievement. It was not a product of academic achievement. That good vocabulary makes communication simpler and less frustrating for the speaker. And that lack of words shuts down new insights and lines of reasoning because a person will not have access to as many text, videos, or informational materials about the career that they're interested in. In his study, he used a vocabulary test, and this particular test is in the context of manufacturing. And he delivered this test widely, and based on the scores, he correlated them to the type of jobs that the participants were doing. So you can see that most people at the president and VP level scored an 87% on his vocabulary assessment. Managers were at 62%, and we go all the way down to floor bosses at 32%. One of our big issues in the US right now is that we need people in jobs. But when our students get a job, we also need them to retain the job. And vocabulary is a good predictor of how well they're going to be able to do that and how well they can advance. While comprehension is the reason for reading, vocabulary plays a huge role in comprehension. So we're going to start there. Research does show that vocabulary acquisition is a very high predictor of reading comprehension. Effective vocabulary knowledge is developed through multiple encounters with a word. So students need to see a word typically again and again before they can reliably recognize it, and especially before they can use it reliably. Students move through stages from not knowing the word at all to recognizing it to knowing how to use it in various contexts. So this is a pattern of gradual growth. Because our students' vocabularies tend to grow with reading experience, adults need to practice reading a wide range of content. So this includes text related to academics, to work, and to other specific learning and life goals. They may also need support to build their knowledge of Tier 2 and Tier 3 words and to improve their word analysis skills, like identifying root words and working with prefixes and suffixes. It's important to keep in mind that building a vocabulary involves explicit teaching of words and phrases integrated with practice through classroom discussion and also writing activities. Combining all of this together improves vocabulary and reading comprehension. Another great way to do this is to use graphic organizers along with a variety of exercises that allow the students to interact with words directly and in multiple ways. This is an example of a vocabulary reading chart, a graphic organizer that instructors can use to build a student's vocabulary, but also to empower the student to take responsibility for her own progress. Each time you begin a new lesson or unit, you can ask students to write the lesson's vocabulary words in the boxes here on the left. So here. Before the lesson begins, students should rate their experience with each new word by checking the boxes here in the Before You Read section. So you can see that there's a key here. If a student checks the box number 1, it would mean I don't know this word at all. Box number 2 would mean I've seen or heard this word, but I don't feel confident about it. And a rating of 3 means I know this word well. After the lesson, students should revisit the list and each word and rate their knowledge again in the After You Read section. So they have completed the unit that contains this vocabulary, and they want to go back now and compare where they were before they began study to where they are after they complete the unit. This should give your students a good idea of how much more time they need to be putting into certain vocabulary words. I also find this really useful as an instructor because it's a good way to check on whether or not you're assigning the proper reading level of words to students. So if you notice that a lot of people in your class in the Before You Read section have written a vocabulary word and they've already rated the word as a 3, I know this word well, you may want to consider that the reading that's assigned isn't challenging enough for those students. Same thing if everybody's identifying all of the vocabulary words as a 1, or if you see a lot of 1 and 2s at the end of the unit, the reading might be a little bit too complex for the students. I'm going to provide you all with a Google Drive folder of all the materials from this session when we finish. And you have this vocabulary rating chart in there. It is fully reproducible, so feel free to use it or adapt it for your own needs. All vocabulary activities complement one another. There are many different ways that we can teach vocabulary, but the more you use interactive methods and using the words in context, the better the result. The more exposures students have to a word, the better chance that they're going to remember it. Additionally, encouraging your students to read also has an effect on the number of words they encounter on a regular basis. For some of our students, they may have had bad experiences or been embarrassed about not being able to read well, and it really takes some confidence building to reassure them in this. I have some students in my class who make it to the the last 3 weeks before they're ready to read out loud, but it's good to give them that time to warm up to reading. Some of the strategies that we can use include identifying word parts, understanding how to use context clues, which is huge for test taking skills, introducing our students to words that have multiple meaning, and helping them understand parts of speech. You can do this even using a dictionary or a glossary to help. In addition to teaching our students to use dictionaries, we can also help them create their own. This is another way that we can empower our students to take control of what and how they learn. The learners can write each new word that they encounter here and use this document as a study aid. Depending on whether you're teaching in person or digitally, you could even make this like a Google folder activity. So your students can add their words and a definition. You may, for example, have them complete this part of the dictionary during class time. And then for homework, you could ask them to use the word in a sentence so that they get more reinforcement outside of the classroom. There are lots and lots of different ways to adapt this basic format. And there are also lots of different shapes and styles of personal dictionaries. I have given you this one, and you're welcome to adapt it best for your needs. Sometimes I think Scott mentioned that he has language learners in his class. In that situation, I sometimes have students write the word, the definition, a sentence, and then in the notes, I might have them write their word in their first language. If the students are at a higher level, I like to challenge them a little bit more. So I might have them write the word, the part of speech and definition here, to use the word in a sentence and to make sure that they've used it in the same part of speech that they identified here. And then I might ask them to write a synonym and an antonym in this box to push their vocabulary development a little bit further. Research shows that there are some key strategies that are highly effective for readers to employ, and that teaching these skills to your students can provide a little bit of an inoculation effect. If they use these consistently over time, they will see their skills increase and their reading comprehension grow. These strategies are using prior knowledge, inferences, monitoring for understanding, questioning, making connections and sequencing, summarizing, and also visualizing. These are some of the skills that research shows make the biggest impact. Each of these should be introduced and taught to students so that they can pull what they need from their learning toolbox. Varying reading skills and activities can also be taught in connection with these strategies. So some things you might do are have them identify and use text structures. For example, compare and contrast, cause and effect, or what's the problem in this story? What was the solution? You can also work on synthesizing and making predictions. I find that students sometimes on the TABE and also on the GED miss a lot of vital information that they can glean just from the instructions, the pictures, or the captions that are available. So I like to really draw students' attention to, let's look at the title of this piece. Let's look at the photo. What do you think that this story is going to be about? So that they can get in the right mind frame to interpret new information that they might find in the passage. You can also have them identify an author's purpose, to analyze a character's point of view, and to understand story parts like introduction, body, and conclusion. And of course, we need to help them identify and cite evidence in text. Valerie, I will give you a copy of the PowerPoint. I'll put it into the Google folder for you. When it comes to reading comprehension, scaffolding lessons is amazing for us as teachers. It gives us the best opportunity to accomplish some of our key goals. These lessons need to be presented in a consistent format so that students know what to expect and they can rely on being able to go through kind of a series of skills for better understanding. This format consists of explanation used to build skills and add them to our learners' progress, modeling, which involves using explicit instruction framed in a consistent lesson format so that student expectations are set. And we also need to do guided or independent practice, which allows the student to try out the new skill or strategy and see if they need more support to be able to use it. When I was in college, we called this I do, we do, you do. So the teacher provides direct instruction in the new content, models it with an example that the group can work on together, and then the student needs to try to apply the new knowledge so that we can find any gaps. Somebody has just asked about strategies for helping students find main ideas. This is something that my students really struggle with also. I like to start. Can the person in the chat say what level their students are? Anywhere from 17 up. Okay. If the students are at the basic ABE reading levels, just to enforce this concept, I like to start by having them look at pictures and to determine what's the main story that this photo is telling you. And then from there, I can ask them what they saw in the photo to give them the idea that this is the main story. And from there, I can kind of grow from main idea to supporting details. So what is this photo trying to tell us, and how do you know that is one way to do that. There's also a text I really like. It's not from New Readers Press. It's an older text. It's called 6-Way Paragraphs, and it's fantastic for teaching that. It uses short paragraphs building up to longer passages, and it asks students to pull information from titles. Writing strategies. Let's take a minute to look at some writing strategies and how we might use them in our own instruction. The writing process is critical to reading comprehension. We know that the writing process consists of several steps, and to become a good writer, a student also needs to be a good reader. Typically, even in native speakers, writing is the last skill that develops. For any of you guys who are like me, grading essays and paragraphs, I know that you know that this is true. Like reading instruction, the writing process can also be broken down into steps and parts. And for the purpose of this session, I'm going to break it down into just these areas. We're going to look at a little bit of explicit writing instruction, incorporating functional and academic writing projects, using graphic organizers to help students plan their writing. I find that this can be really helpful because it makes looking at a blank page really scary. If I ask a student to write an essay, I usually see a complete panic face. But if they've already outlined the sections of what they need to write, that eases the panic. Of course, we also need language and grammar lessons, and because writing is such a good place to practice, use, and demonstrate knowledge and vocabulary, that's an important part of writing instruction as well. You can either teach the words before the student writes through their rough draft, or you can help students incorporate new words as they revise. You might want to ask your students to record even these new words and synonyms and antonyms using something like the personal dictionary that we talked about. Incorporating writing skills and strategies into your reading activities also helps to make students more comfortable with the content, and it helps to increase their skills. Students need to be able to actively use writing to help them understand what they're reading. There are lots of different ways that you can incorporate writing into your reading instruction and use those for different purposes or to pull out different skills. These listed here are a few that you can use when you're teaching a skill that is more academic. So one thing it can be really helpful to teach our students is how to take notes. If I don't teach this before I ask a student to take notes, what I get is a whole page that's highlighted in yellow, or almost everything that is on the page has been written down as a note in complete sentence format. And I have a lot of sympathy for that because I didn't learn study and note-taking skills until college. And when I look back at all of my textbooks, I see that exact same thing. We can also use writing an argument or taking different positions on a topic, using students to pull evidence from text as they start to prepare for that GED essay. We can use summary and narrative paragraphs to ask a student to tell back in a shorter form what they've just read. And we can also use this as a great way to have students practice using transition words. Well, explanatory and informative writing is what we can use to help students learn how to write clearly. So for example, with lower level students, sometimes I use a recipe to do this. It helps students learn to condense information into a short form, but the steps need to be clear to follow. And this is a bit difficult to do right now in the COVID-19 era, but if you have the ability to do this and you're in the classroom, it can even be something like somebody writes the instructions for making a sandwich, and then you bring in some gloves, some bread, some toppings, and have students actually try to follow the instructions as they're written to make a sandwich. Giving directions can be another good way to do this. For example, write out the directions of how to follow the emergency evacuation plan in case there's a fire drill, and then let your class go through the instructions and see if they actually work. For those of you who haven't seen our Journey to Success series, I'm going to introduce you very quickly to some components of the series. This series is based on an EBRI, or evidence-based reading instruction model. So it follows the pattern of the presentation I'm going through with you today. First, take a look at how the series is structured to focus on and build in text complexity as students move from level to level. The series also uses evidence derived from text passages, which prompt reading, writing, and speaking skills, and that build knowledge across disciplines. So even if you're using a text like this at the ABE level, the reading levels 1 through 5, the articles and stories that the students are reading have literary, scientific, social studies, or workplace focuses, so that they're related to college and career readiness standards, and also building the background knowledge that students need when they get up to the GED level. Each lesson framework provides you with an introduction of the topic, and very often I like to put an introduction on the board for students or to do an activity that pulls out what background knowledge they might have. It defines the lesson goals, so it's easy to see what standards you're covering and what the purpose the book has identified for each lesson is. It gives you pre-vocabulary and skill builders along with definitions in case you need to pre-teach the vocabulary for the unit. It does have paired reading passages so that students can compare multiple text. And the readings are varied. So of course, in this example, Unit 3 is science focused. Unit 4 may be work focused or social studies focused. And there are a variety of types of writing levels depending on the level of the student. Journey is designed to help the students reach the reading goals through a lot of different methodologies like direct and explicit instruction, before, during, and after reading techniques, brainstorming and writing, independent practice, and partner and group work, which are so important as we prepare students to succeed in the workplace. There's also a fluency component, which can be really important. Sometimes when I talk to my students after they take their TABE test, I learn that they didn't finish because they didn't have enough time to read the passages. So this fluency work can really help a student build up their speed so that they can get through those longer passages for the TABE and also the GED. And of course, there are topics that promote critical thinking and discussion. As the instructor, of course, you can tailor this and vary it however you would like to meet the needs of your specific class. Every group is a little bit different, so sometimes you need more focus on some areas than others. Each lesson does follow a consistent layout. We always begin with a warm-up activity before we move into pre-reading and reading strategies. Then there is a writing component. This looks a lot different depending on what level student you're teaching. And there's always a review. So there are unit reviews, think and discuss prompts, and graphic organizers throughout these for honing reading and writing skills. We tackle a variety of writing skills with exercises that help the learners to grow their reading skills and allow them to gain writing practice, first with words, then with sentences, then finally moving into paragraphs and more formal writing like the argumentative essay style for the GED. There's a logical flow here, and it uses skills that have been mastered to make moving into a more complex skill easier. Each lesson in the unit focuses on a specific reading skill with writing practice. So for example, in this activity, you can see that we'd be focusing on sequence. So all of the activities related to this particular passage will be helping students to understand sequencing better and to know how to structure that with writing or an organizer. Sometimes this is a timeline, sometimes it's in a format like this. And there are always hints to help the students along the way. They also include mini grammar lesson callouts that are located in select lessons. Each book contains 8 to 11 of these mini grammar lessons, depending on the level. These provide additional practice with key standard conventions of language, subject-verb agreement, mechanics, sentence structure, punctuation, and spelling. And of course, there are think and discuss activities that conclude each lesson. These are really nice for building critical thinking skills and asking students to go deeper into a topic. You can also take something like this and have students branch off with some research skill or citing of evidence if you want to teach them to look up more information about a topic and present it to the class. So let's look at how to put this all together. We're going to take a look at how you might teach vocabulary and reading comprehension using the Journey to Success Level 3 book. This is lesson 8, and I have given you a copy of the full lesson in your Google folder. It is a science-based lesson. Teaching vocabulary, as we all know, is part art and part methodology. Many of the lessons in Journey concentrate on a few core aspects of vocabulary, such as word parts, prefixes, and suffixes. You can also find context clues used throughout the series. And because many of the words in especially the science domain have their roots in Latin and Greek, students can learn about etymology or word origin of certain words. This can go a long way toward helping them be able to guess the meaning of a new word that they encounter, even if they have never studied it before. Let's take a quick look at what that might look like as far as etymology. For example, photosynthesis is a word that we can break down to get a meaning for the word. So if we know that photo has the meaning of light and syn has the meaning of together, thesis means setting up or putting in place. So this word by its parts means light together putting, or putting together with light. And that knowing any part of this breakdown can help a student have a better chance of guessing at what this word means if they encounter it for the first time. There are also lots of ways that we can use context clues. For example, sometimes the context clue provides a definition. Sometimes it restates the vocabulary in another way. It allows us a chance to infer meaning from the passage, or it might set up a contrast between something that is very different to the word. And finally, punctuation can tell us a little bit about the seriousness of a statement. Let's take a look at this photo, my friends. In the chat, if you could, please write a brief description of what you see, but do not use the word tornado. Tell me what you see in that photo without using the word tornado. A rope of wind destroys a field of dreams. That is poetic, Valerie. I like it. Twirling, cloud tunnel, excellent, extreme weather. These are all really good examples. I see a funnel of wind reaching from the sky to the ground. Awesome. These are really good ways to describe something without using a vocabulary word. Severe weather in a rural area, James, that's awesome. That would also give you lots of chance to dig into how somebody identified a rural area. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to take a look at some of the vocabulary words that are associated with this particular lesson. There are both tier 2 and tier 3 words here. Just take a moment in your mind to think about how you might introduce them to a learner and what you would help them do to understand these words. In this situation, the text would provide you with the vocabulary words and the definitions, but you can do this with a lot of different things. So if you're using a different textbook, you can easily create this for yourself. If you need to incorporate technology, you can make a Quizlet for this. I sometimes do this with newspaper articles. So you can pull out some keywords from a newspaper article and make short definitions. Or if your class is stronger, you can have them generate the definitions. If you have English language learners in your class, it can also, you may need to think of some additional ways that you can introduce these vocabulary words. It's very helpful in that context to make sure you've covered them pretty thoroughly before you start reading. Okay, I'm going to ask you all to do an activity just for a little bit of fun, if you don't mind. If you could, please take a photo of this slide with your phones. Or a screenshot if you're on a computer. Has everybody got it? Anybody need more time before I stop sharing the screen? Okay, yes, thumbs up, got it. Thank you. You guys are awesome participants. I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. We don't have a lot of time left, so I'm just going to give you 5 minutes, which I know is not enough, but it will let you get a little bit of a feel here. What I would like for you to do is to ask and answer these questions with your partner. Use your own personal experience from your own life to answer these questions. So if question 1 asks, what do you predict that you'll be doing a year from now? Use your own life experience to answer that question. Are you all ready? Okay, you're going to be 2 to 3 to a group, and I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Please enjoy talking with your colleagues. Dr. Wilkerson, since you're in charge, it hasn't sent you into a breakout room. James, I'm sorry about that. Our
That's
5 minutes
okay.
ended right while we were talking.
Yeah.
Okay, team, if you could, please tell me in the chat, did you enjoy this activity and why or why not? Okay, one of our groups could not hear each other. Somebody couldn't speak with their person. Enjoyed it because it gave me a chance to connect personally with colleagues. I thought it was fun. My partner didn't arrive, so I did it by myself. That is very industrious, Anne. Thank you. Good activity. I enjoyed speaking with someone. For me, my partner was James, and we learned that we have some really weird things in common. Like I have a Star Trek book on my desk, and he's wearing a Star Trek shirt, and we both have poetry on our desks. So this can be a really low pressure way for your students to build some connections with one another, and to also warm up to how these vocabulary words might be used in their real lives. I find that this can help build confidence so that they go into the lesson not thinking, ooh, science is scary, but instead thinking, oh, I have some experience. I know how to talk about these things. Another method that you can use is synthesizing. It can be a difficult skill for students to learn. So I'm very quickly going to go over 3 methods that you might use. There's the KWL chart, which we have all probably seen. What does the student know before they start? What do they learn in the passage? And what do they want to learn? There's also the REST method and Venn diagrams. For the REST method, this is great if you want to support students who are at or above level. This is done by using 2 different passages on a similar topic. So you can have students read 2 different sources about a topic and record their ideas. They can then edit their notes and combine concepts that are similar, synthesize by combining the notes with what they already know about the topic, and then think about new ideas they have or things outside the passage that they might want to connect. Teachers need to model this method quite a bit before your students are able to do it independently. I typically would start with 1 letter of the REST model at a time, maybe work on 1 in the first lesson and then the next in following lessons. As long as students are recording their information, teachers can allow the students to process the information in the way that works best for them. Another thing that we can use is Venn diagrams. I love these as an effective tool for teaching synthesizing to students. Students can use this method at a lot of different levels to record facts about 2 topics, which go in the larger outer circles, and then record their overlapping facts and ideas in the inner circles. You can even ask them to add information, prior knowledge that they've learned outside of class. Then you can ask them to add information from the reading, and finally, to add information from a discussion that follows the reading. I love this as a way to put information from multiple sources together. Sometimes I like to throw a YouTube video in here also, so that there's a listening component. Then from the diagram, students can formulate their own ideas about a topic. Here's an example of one that I did on the similarities and differences between bats and bees. I think most of you are probably familiar with Venn diagrams, so I won't go into them deeply. But I did want to let you know that I put a graphic organizer for this into your folder. My students laugh at me a lot when I try to draw these because my drawing is so bad. So now I have a student volunteer who draws them for me, or I use the template. So quickly to give some information about our Journey to Success series, it is one of the most sought after core reading series by New Readers Press. It is based on that evidence-based reading instruction or EBRI model. One thing that's cool about this is that the teacher's guide is available for free on our New Readers Press website. So if you go to newreaderspress.com and you type journey into the search bar, you'll be able to see all of these text. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page to additional features, you will be able to see and download the teacher's guide for free. If that has some fun activities and also lots more graphic organizers. Even if you don't have this series, you can apply that to other reading. We have intro through level 6, and just this month we came out with level 7. So the level 7 text is actually available as of this month. I didn't expect that to be ready yet, but yay. And we are expecting to have book 8 out in December. So this is a good bridge for your students who are going from ABE to those 6th to 8th grade reading levels. This is a really nice thing that you can use levels 7, even 6 to an extent, 6, 7, and 8, to support those students and to be able to introduce new content knowledge. This is great for students who still need to build reading skills but want to get to the GED. The teacher's guide does include pre and post test and lesson plans throughout. And of course, you can access that for free. There are also reading comprehension and fluency strategies there, tailored notes and photocopyable masters, especially if you need any graphic organizers, grab those from the website. And I am going to stop there because we only have 1 minute left. But I do want to very quickly provide you with this promo code here. If you want to use Forum 21, you can get free shipping on any orders over $100. And this is my contact information. I'm your New Readers Press friend, so feel free to reach out to me by phone or email. Do you have, oh, I'm sorry. Let me very quickly drop the link to this Google Drive in the chat for you, if you don't mind, so that you can take this information with you. I'm sorry, hang with me for just 1 minute. I have a touchscreen computer and it gets very finicky about Zoom sometimes.
While you're doing that, Rebecca, I just want everyone to know that I just put the Zoom link for the SurveyMonkey in the chat. So if you would take note of that. And Rebecca, we want to thank you for being part of our conference this year and for sharing that information with us today.
It was my pleasure, Scott. Thank you so much for having me. And I did just drop that Google link into the chat, so feel free to grab that. I'll put the PowerPoint in later today, but all of the other organizers are there.
That link is not to the SurveyMonkey.
The link I put in is for a Google folder. Is that okay that I drop that there?
Oh, Catherine, are you talking about the one I put in?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't see the one that you put in. I'm not seeing the SurveyMonkey one. I'm seeing her her folder that she shared.
Yes, I'm getting it right now. I put the wrong one in there. I'll drop it in. There, that should be the right one.
Thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate you attending and your excellent participation. I hope that next year I get to meet you in person.
Thank you. We sure appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if there's something from the presentation you want but didn't find in the folder.